The Awakening, the Revised Edition by Lilac Moon. Chapter 7, Hostage Crisis Part 2. Padme tucked herself close behind her husband as he peeked around the corner. She was still wrapping her mind around the fact that a bounty hunter and his hired hands had actually managed to nullify the Senate building security and infiltrate the complex, not to mention create a successful hostage situation. It made her realize she had a false sense of security in the building, and that Anakin was right to be so insistent that she have a tight security detail when he wasn't around. She felt guilty that she had actually argued with him about it on several occasions, selfishly citing that more security stifled her independence. But now she understood his stance. While he was out fighting a war, he was also worrying about her safety. She decided she would gladly let him win this particular argument. Coruscant and the Senate were becoming increasingly dangerous. Turning her attention back to the situation at hand, she slowly peeked around her husband, eyeing the lone lackey patrolling this particular corridor. "Stay here," he told her as he crept around the corner. The creature spotted him and raised a blaster, but he was nowhere near quick enough. A snap hiss was heard as Anakin's lightsaber blazed to life and he cut the minion down. Padme yelped in fright as someone grabbed her from behind and pressed the barrel of a blaster to her head. He disarmed her and tossed her blaster to the floor. "Anakin!" she called. "Drop it, Jedi, or I'll kill her," he snarled. Anakin extinguished his blade and slowly put it on the ground. The other lackey that held her captive chuckled. "Good. Some Jedi you are." He laughed, but it was the last thing he would ever say. Padme's blaster, which was on the ground, flew into his hand. He fired, shooting the minion dead in the center of his forehead. Padme looked stunned as her captor fell to the ground. Her shock and amazement remained as her husband's lightsaber flew into his hand and he rejoined her. He placed his hand on the small of her back and pulled her into a brief but passionate kiss. The amazement was still present on her face. She knew he was a very skilled and gifted warrior, but he used his powers now with a graceful confidence, absent of arrogance, that she had not seen before. And it was exhilarating, especially when she knew that everything he did was for her. Touching her had been the man's final and fatal error. "Come on," he told her as he took her hand and led her down the now empty corridor. Aurra Singh entered the room and approached her boss. "Joss and Kinsey are dead. One by lightsaber and another by blaster," Aurra reported. "A Jedi? That makes things more interesting. He may have someone with him. Capture them and bring them here." Bane ordered. "Yes, sir," she replied as she left the room. Thanks to Padme's extensive knowledge of the building's schematics, she had led them to Bail's office. Anakin removed the cover of the ventilation shaft, and they now navigated through the shaft and down to the 14th level. They would be able to make their way down to the room of hostages that were being held in. Anakin slid his tall frame through the open shaft and into the vacant office. Making sure it was clear, he reached out to help Padme. "Ouch," he heard her say. "You okay, Angel?" He called. "Yes, it's just a little scrape," she replied as she poked her head out. "Put your feet through and I'll help you out," Anakin told her, knowing that her bulky gown gave her less maneuverability. "I would, except my dress is caught on something," Padme replied as she pulled on it. Half her body was already out of the shaft and she heard a tear. She yelped as she fell out of the ventilation shaft. Anakin caught her in his arms before she could hit the floor. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he now held her bridal style, chuckling slightly. "Not my most graceful moment." "I'm glad you think it's funny," she told him. "Even when you're less than graceful, you're beautiful and adorable," he replied as he set her on her feet. "Come on," he said, and he led her by the hand. He poked his head out of the door of the office and slowly let her head out behind him as they navigated the empty corridor. One of Bane's minions rounded the corner, spotting them. He fired a round at them, instantly drawing attention. Anakin pulled Padme into a small alcove in the hallway as his lightsaber blazed to life. He stepped out and blocked several blaster bolts with his saber and deflected the last back at Bane's lackey, hitting him in the forehead. Unfortunately, more of Bane's people had now been alerted to their presence, as 2 more arrived and began firing. Anakin killed the first 2 with his own blaster, while Padme stepped out from behind cover and shot the other twice in the chest, killing him. Anakin smirked. "Nice shooting, Angel," he complimented as he took her hand again and led her out of the mouth of the corridor, which had 3 directions to choose from. "Which way to the meeting rotunda?" he asked. "Left is the most direct route," she told him. "Likely the most heavily guarded, too," he said. "Going right won't get us anywhere, but if we go straight, there's the control room behind the meeting rotunda." "We'd be going in the back way," she mentioned. "Then that's the way we're going to go," he replied. "But Bane has shut off the building's power. The artillery bridge that connects each side of the room is probably not working." Padme replied. Anakin smirked. "Who says I need a bridge to get us across?" he asked as he led her to the center passageway. "Boss, they got 3 more," one of his minions replied. "They?" Bane questioned curiously. "There's a woman with the Jedi," he reported as he played the recordings for his boss. "Well, the Jedi has a pretty little companion with him. A senator by the looks of her attire." "Interesting," Bane said. "We thought they would head for the entrance, but they're nowhere in sight." The man reported. "Of course they're not, you fool. He's a Jedi and is going to try to sneak his way in," Bane concluded as he raised his comlink to his lips. "Aura, looks like our Jedi friend is protecting a senator. They're trying to slip in here, using the back way," Bane informed her. "On it, boss," Aura replied. Anakin pried the doors to the control room open and they entered the darkened corridor. "If we get across to the other door, then that corridor will lead straight to the side exit of the meeting rotunda," Padme said. He put his arm around her waist. "When we get in there, stay behind me," he told her. She nodded. "I love you," she replied. "I love you too, Angel," he replied as he tossed his grappling cable up, where it wound itself around a beam in the ceiling. He held her tightly around the waist, and she held his face in her hands, kissing passionately for a moment. He smiled at her before swinging them across the gap where the bridge usually extended to connect the control outlets. Anakin melted their way through the other door and came face to face with Aura Singh, the former Jedi turned criminal. She wielded a light whip with an orange blade. "It's the end of the line for you and your pretty friend, Jedi," Aura sneered. "I don't think so," Anakin replied as he ignited his sapphire blade. Padme stepped back and to the side as her husband engaged in the battle initiated by the fallen former Jedi, all while guarding her from the woman's attacks. "I was once like you. I let the Jedi pull my strings and hold me back from realizing my full potential," Aura boasted. "Your ego is the only thing that holds you back," Anakin retorted. "Touché, hero with no fear," Aura drooled. "You and your boss are like all the other bounty hunters and criminals, and your evil agenda will fail, just like all the others," Anakin promised. "I think you'll soon find that my boss isn't your average bounty hunter. And you should also know, being criminals that we are, that we don't fight fairly." Aura leered just as Padme gasped. "Anakin!" she cried out. He whipped around, finding that another assassin, who looked to be small-boned and physically weak, was about to prove why he worked for Bane. He had no presence in the Force, a gift that only a few species possessed, and Anakin had not sensed him. One of his special weapons, a small circular probe, rolled towards Anakin. He didn't have time to avoid it. Using the Force, he gently pushed Padme back out of its range, as an electromagnetic pulse erupted from the device and hit him full force. "Anakin!" Padme cried out in despair, as he writhed on the floor in terrible agony. Aura leveled her blaster at Padme, and the young senator surrendered her weapon, as the other minion placed a pair of stun cuffs on Anakin's wrists, as unconsciousness swept over him. "This way, Senator. My boss is eager to meet you both," Aura said as she led Padme to the meeting rotunda at blaster point, while 2 goons dragged her husband's unconscious form behind them. The goons dropped Anakin onto the floor in the centre of the cluster of captive senators, while Aura set his lightsaber on the control panel next to her boss, while leading Padme into the room.
"Nice rescue,"
Bane said sarcastically as he turned his attention to Padme.
"Well, and who might you be?"
Bane asked. "I'm Senator Amidala of the Naboo," Padme replied fiercely.
"A senator? Aren't you a little pretty and young to be a senator?"
He goaded as he gently shoved her towards the group of her colleagues. She knelt down and put her hand on Anakin's forehead. To her colleagues, it seemed she was casually checking his vitals, but her soft touch calmed them both, and he slowly stirred. He reached up in order to cup her cheek. More than anything, she craved his touch, but she was forced to stop his hand. This action immediately told him that they were not alone, and he quickly relied on his connection to the Force to gain his bearings. Padme helped him to his feet as he glared at Bane. At that moment, Chancellor Palpatine appeared on the holoscreen.
"Senator Tar has arrived in the prison, and Zero the Hutt has been released as you requested. Now you will leave my Senate and harm no one else,"
Palpatine stated firmly. Bane smirked.
"Of course, Chancellor. A deal is a deal. It's been pleasure doing business with you,"
Bane said as he turned to Anakin.
"I win this one, Jedi. Let's go,"
Bane ordered to his goons as they filed out. As Aura Singh started towards the exit, she clipped Anakin's lightsaber to her belt and smirked at him. The moment she turned her back, he carefully used the Force to lift it from her without her noticing and into Padme's hands.
"I need you to slice through these cuffs,"
he told her, and she nodded.
"The danger should be over. We did as he asked,"
said Bale.
"It doesn't matter. He's a bounty hunter, and he'll set the thermal detonators off anyway,"
Anakin replied as Padme ignited his lightsaber and sliced through his cuffs. Their eyes locked a moment later, before he plunged his blade into the floor and cut a circle in the floor around the group of senators. The thermal detonators started blinking wildly as they fell through the floor. Anakin found his way back to Padme and put his arm around her waist, as they all landed on the floor below, narrowly missing the explosion. They were alive, thanks to Anakin, even if Bane had managed to escape with Zero the Hutt. Despite that, everyone was safe, and that was all that mattered. Palpatine stood in his office with a satisfied smirk on his face, as he gazed out across the Coruscant skyline. Bane had proved to be most effective, and worthy of the price of his hefty fee. Skywalker and his little wife were still alive, but it was of no consequence. Palpatine had hoped for them to survive, for he would have his ultimate revenge on Anakin when he someday unleashed his own grown, evil son upon him. He wanted the last thing Anakin ever saw to be his own son's yellow eyes bleeding through him as he cut him down. As for Padme, the little nuisance, he was certain the future death of her husband and the reality of what her son had become would kill her. Palpatine smirked evilly. Revenge would indeed be sweet. Hours had passed since the incident. Anakin had gone to the Jedi Temple to brief the Council on what had happened. The HoloNet had hold of the story of Zero's escape and Anakin's rescue of those involved, as well as discussion on the man they now knew as Cad Bane. She waited impatiently for her husband to return, hoping his leave wouldn't be cut short. Fortunately, she soon heard the stomp on the veranda, as his boots landed solidly on the ground, his form concealed by the black of the night. She ran to him as he entered, and he caught her in his arms, hugging her tightly. Their lips met in a desperate array of passionate kisses. "Are you all right?" she asked.
"Of course, I'm fine,"
he told her as he kissed her again while holding her face in his hands. "What did the Council say?" she asked.
"They've never heard of Bane either. We were caught off guard, so the fact that no one was hurt or killed was actually miraculous. They thanked me for that, in their own roundabout way, and told me to plan on shipping out as soon as planned. The day after tomorrow,"
he told her. "So we still have all night and all day tomorrow?" she asked. He smiled and nodded.
"I'm all yours,"
he told her. We were lucky that no one was hurt, except that you were. Will you please let me look you over? She asked.
Angel, I'm fine, he insisted.
You were hit with an electromagnetic pulse beam, she argued.
So I'll be sore for a few days. No harm done,
he explained. She sighed. Humour me, she requested.
He smirked. Padme, if you want me to let you take my clothes off, just ask,
he said with a playful eyebrow wiggle. She giggled. You are so bad. Get in the bedroom, she ordered.
Your wish is my command, Senator,
he replied. As they entered the bedroom, he shed his tunic and sat down on the bed. Padme sat down next to him and wrapped her arms around him. She now had a sad look on her face.
What is it?
He asked. It's just... I worry all the time about you going out into the war, and I lie awake at night, wondering if I'll ever see you again, she said, choking back a sob. And then you come home to me, and even here you're still in danger. I could have lost you today, and I was barely 2 feet away, she sobbed as the tears slipped down her cheeks. He took her in his arms and gently wiped the tears from her beautiful face.
You're never going to lose me. Not as long as we have faith in our love. That's what you've always told me. You've always told me that love will always be enough to save us,
he said. She sniffed and started to wipe her eyes. I know. I'm sorry. It's just... when I saw you being hurt, there was nothing I could do about it. It was killing me, she said. He nodded.
I know. I go through the same thing every time I think someone is about to hurt you. That's the only reason I tolerated being away from you for months at a time. So that I could end this war and protect you. Believe me, I haven't forgotten our dream. Someday, you and I will be home on Naboo, raising a beautiful family, away from all this ugliness, he said as he kissed her forehead. I used to crave battle, the adrenaline, but I don't anymore. You and the love we share is all I crave and desire anymore. And that is why I will do anything to protect you and our future together, he told her. She nodded. You're right. As long as I trust in our love, then I have to believe that we will overcome anything, she replied as their lips met in a passionate kiss. I love you so much. Never doubt it or forget it, he whispered breathlessly as their faces were only inches apart. I could never. You're my life, she whispered back before their lips crashed together again, and soon their love and passion for each other was all they knew. Little did they know, Anakin's words would be put to the ultimate test in the future, and the question of whether their love could overcome anything would be tested and proved. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I really like this. That was a good chapter. I love that bit with the bounty hunters having someone who Anakin can't sense in the Force. But I also love Padme's observation that Anakin's losing his arrogance. I love that. I know the problem with Anakin is that he loved too much. But in this story there is no such thing as love too much, and that's what pulls him back to the light, which I actually really appreciate. Well, if you guys know anything about my stories, you know I'm an absolute sap for this kind of stuff. So anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.